Hello, welcome to North Seattle College Art Gallery's virtual visiting artist lecture series on Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm Amanda Knowles, the coordinator of the North Seattle College Art Gallery, and I teach printmaking and drawing at the school in the art department. I'm lucky to work with Julie Graber, assistant in the art gallery, who's letting folks in here today. We are both supported by work study students Coley, Emma, Lillian, and River. This is our first visiting artist lecture for the 2025-2026 school year, and we're thrilled to have artist Carly Feddersen with us today. We started these talks 5 years ago and have nearly 40 lectures available on the NSC Art Gallery YouTube channel. We have live transcript available for those of you who want it. It can be turned on by clicking show subtitle at the bottom of your Zoom screen, should you need it. We start these lectures with land and labor acknowledgements, and I will share my screen for that. North Seattle College acknowledges that we occupy the lands of the Coast Salish peoples, the descendants of the first peoples of this region, a people whose cultures endure and are valued. Without this land and these cultures, we would not have access to this gathering, dialogue, and learning space. We take this moment to honor and thank the original caretakers of this land and their descendants who are still here. We encourage participants here today to consider our responsibilities as we stand in solidarity with the sovereignty, cultural heritage, and lives of Native, Indigenous, and First Nations peoples. We also have a labor acknowledgement. We also pause to recognize and acknowledge the labor that created the United States and from which we all benefit. We remember that our nation is a labor of enslaved people who were forcibly brought to the U.S. from the African continent, and we recognize the continued contribution of their survivors. We acknowledge immigrant labor and recognize that voluntary forced and prison labor contribute to the building and ongoing maintenance of our nation. We acknowledge all unpaid caregiving labor. Additionally, we acknowledge the critical importance of the work towards racial equity that continues across this country in response to racial injustice and generations of structural racism. And then our third slide is what we are doing. As we go from acknowledgement to deed, we know that it's not enough to just give it a hello acknowledgement and have to be sure that we're taking action. We show you here what actions North Seattle College and the North Seattle College Art Department are taking to support BIPOC individuals and institutions and to be held accountable. Thank you. The first show of the 2025-2026 school year is entitled Affinities, Contemporary Artists of the Northwest Plateau Tribes, and is now on view in the North Seattle Gallery until November 7th. Carly has work in this show. It is a wonderful exhibition, and I urge you all to go and see it if you are able. Gallery hours are Mondays through Thursdays, 11 to 5 p.m., and Fridays, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our upcoming virtual visiting artist lectures are planned. Please see Facebook, Instagram, and our website and flyers around campus to find out what's going on in the gallery and who will be talking and when. We also urge you to visit our website for links to recordings of nearly all of the talks to date. We will get this one up there by the end of the week. We will post our links in the chat. Julie will post our links in the chat. How about that? You can sign up for emails by contacting us at nscartgallery@seattlecolleges.edu. I want to remind you that North Seattle College Art Gallery is honored to have support from the college, student leadership, and from all of you here today. Thank you for attending these events and sharing them with people that you know who might enjoy them. Keep visiting the gallery, stopping in to say hello, and building the art community at North. Thank you. And on to the reason that we are here today. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Carly Feddersen. Carly is an enrolled member of the Confederated Tribes of the Colville Reservation. She is a multidisciplinary artist who works in jewelry and traditional plateau basketry, as well as other media. She lives and works in Wenatchee, Washington. Carly holds a BFA in studio art from the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe, New Mexico. She was a 2024 Eric and Barbara Dobkin Native Artist Fellow at the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe and has held artist residencies at the Institute of American Indian Arts and Pilchuck School. She was awarded a Goodman Fellowship from the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture. Her work is in many collections around the country, including the Portland Art Museum, the Museum of Contemporary Native Arts, the Heard Museum, the School for Advanced Research, the Washington State Historical Society, and more. Her work has been included in numerous shows around the country. Last month, she installed an artwork made in collaboration with Joe Feddersen at the Albina Library in Portland, Oregon. As well as the work in our gallery, Carly has work in the Spirit Contemporary Native Arts exhibition at the Washington State Historical Society in Tacoma, Washington, which opens this Saturday. Her work articulates connections between her Plateau heritage and popular culture using various techniques, including metalsmithing, carving, glassworking, weaving, and print. I would also like to thank Donna Holloway of Studio E, who introduced the NSC Art Gallery team to Carly and her work. And I just want to say we are so pleased that you are here with us today, Carly. Welcome.
Thank you. I am so happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction. I'm here at my home in Wenatchee, Washington, and it is very rainy, but I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So yes, my name is Carly Feddersen. I'm an artist. I'm primarily known for my jewelry, incorporating carved stone elements, as well as my basketry. I thought it'd be fun to start from the beginning for this artist talk. So here are a few of my earliest pieces that I made while I was a student at the Institute of American Indian Art. This is really when I fell in love with making wearable items. It just felt so natural. And this piece it's a werewolf, and his little wolf face flips up to reveal, like, the human skull inside of it. And I did a small series of these. This is a werepanther, but this was before I got the idea to start working with found stones, because living here in Central Washington, or throughout Washington, there is an abundance of amazing natural stones all along the rivers and lakes. And so when I started getting into jewelry making, almost immediately I wanted to start working with found stones and to carve them myself. And so, I think about everybody has probably gone and collected pretty rocks at the river, and I have done a ton of that my whole life because of, I grew up right next to the Columbia River here in Wenatchee. And so these pieces, I just started bringing them to my studio and started thinking about, what kind of objects I wanted to make. And where I first started with my stone carving exploration in jewelry was fingers. And so I did a lot of fingers, and it kind of was an intro to carving for me, but also it was a way to watch, various patterns and colors and textures of stones that I had collected transform, and the kind of character that they added to the pieces that I was making. And so sometimes, depending on the qualities of the stones, they would have some pretty unique effects. When I lived in Santa Fe, the stones in Santa Fe are quite different than the ones here, which was also a really interesting thing to realize, just picking stones up everywhere. But they have a lot of quartz and more brightly colored stones in New Mexico. And so these are a few that I picked up there and worked with. This is a much more recent one that's basalt from the river here in Wenatchee. And so working with stones and, seeing fingers everywhere, it also, when I was collecting stones, I would start to get little inspirations for different pieces just based on seeing stones. Sometimes in the parking lot at the grocery store, where they have those little rocked in areas, that I would see a stone that looked like something and have to pick it up. And so this stone, as you can see on the right, is very obviously a tongue when I first found it. And I picked it up to use for this piece that I made on the left, which is several years old, but the whole feeling of working with these stones early on was like very intuitive, where they would kind of tell me what they wanted to be is what it felt like. And here's another variation of a tongue. It's this one's sunstone. And so here's another example of a stone that when I saw it, I thought it totally had to be a brain. And so the process pictures on the right kind of give you an idea of how a lot of stones that I pick up to work with end up. Like I bring them in and I'll like kind of draw out a little sketch of the idea and then get to the process. And so these are a couple of brooches, some type of quartz or maybe sunstone. This is a more recent example of that piece as a bolo tie. I used turquoise for the brain on this one, and you can see the tie tips are his eyeballs at the bottom. This is another piece where it's just seeing a little stone and thinking it, it looked like a skull, and also wanting to experiment with trying to make a hat on a piece of jewelry. And so again, the stones, I get the idea and then they reveal their own characters, and it's very interesting. It's like watching little critters like kind of come to life, and it's just been a really fun transformation from just picking up stones, working with them, learning to carve, and then the way that helped me move into working with other materials. This is an amazing piece of pink granite that I found at Lake Chelan. He's got little emerald tube set eyes, and just another example of how like the colors and textures on stones can make such an impact to the finished pieces. And this bird, I liked the plumage look of the stone for the chest on it. The stone actually came from the alley behind my house, and just a fun piece. Was super happy with how this one turned out. So I got invited to do a bolo tie exhibition last year, and I had never made a bolo tie before, but using my primary method of working with stones, this is what I came up with. And you'll see the stone on the right that I used for its construction. It's diorite. There's loads of it here. It's a lot like granite. So it's hard and kind of crystalline. It polishes really well. And I made the bolo tie for it, incorporating the shape of the antenna as the bolo tie tips. And when you wear these pieces, the bolo ties, they give the effect of like trails, slug trails up the front of you, but just, very dapper and glamorous. Here's another variation, just slightly changed the design, but I tend to do pieces over and over again because I love seeing the iterations of them as I, make small changes. This is the most recent one that I made. It belongs to my friend Derek Sheffield, who's the poet laureate of Washington, and so he's traveling all over the state right now. And this type of stone is actually one of my favorite. It is basalt. It has these little white flecks and inclusions in it. And that's another thing about working with found stones and found materials is that with slugs especially, all of those little patterns and textures, once they get carved and shaped into a slug and incorporated with the other pieces, it absolutely looks like it has to be some species of slug somewhere. Like they just come to life. So in working with stone, that has definitely opened up to experimenting with other types of materials. This piece is ebony, and it actually came from, it's like an upcycled piece from a Victorian table crumb sweeping set. So very interesting old object. And then this is part of the handle, and it is a super lovely material to work with. This piece it's a piece that I did in a residency with Denise Wallace at the Oregon College of Art and Craft. It was several years ago. It was an amazing experience, and it was so wonderful to work with her and the other artists there. This piece was whale tooth, and it was my first time working with ivory and doing scrimshaw. And this piece it's called The Resurrector. It's based on our Coyote stories. Coyote he's always getting into trouble, and he's always accidentally killing himself. And he's brought back to life each time by Fox, who jumps over his bones 3 times, and then he comes back to life. And he never knows that he died when he comes back to life. He always thinks that he was asleep. And so this is Fox, and he's got the bones across the top with the arc for, his ability to resurrect Coyote. Okay, so once I started working with ivory, with the whale tooth, I was immediately interested in working with elk teeth. The incisor teeth are also ivory. They are a status symbol in the plateau and carry a lot of cultural significance. And the way that I like to work with them is to kind of incorporate that idea of tooth charms or tooth gems into the teeth, and to play off of contemporary ideas of body modifications and the use of elk teeth and prestige. And so this one is paired with pearls and handmade silver beads. Another variation of elk teeth. At this point, I had a lot of the work I shared before these pieces are several years old. At this point, I have started making all of my own components. I try to make every single piece of the metalsmithed pieces of the jewelry. So all of the elements from here out are hand fabricated. And this is a piece that I finished recently that incorporates scrimshaw and the use of diamonds. The biggest diamond I ever worked with. It belonged to my friend Sabrina, and she asked me to repurpose it for her. This piece and the next few pieces are from an exhibition that I did through a Native Arts and Cultures Foundation grant. My exhibition was at Wenatchee Valley College, and the grant was so in the Columbia Plateau, we have made beads since the dawn of time. And then trade beads came along, and a lot of people shifted towards, they were readily accepted as an already established cultural item. And so I liked the idea of, just because we have access to manufactured beads, we can still make our own. And the Plateau has always been a culture of being really resourceful and being adaptive, and new materials come in, you find a new use for them. And so there were a lot of ideas bouncing around in my head when I started these pieces, but it was to have a native made beadwork that was a contemporary luxury item, while also being heavily inspired by the aesthetic of beaded pieces from hundreds of years ago. So it was a lot of ideas. This piece it's got elk teeth and scrimshawed bone. I made all of the glass beads. I made all of the silver beads, and the name of my show is named after this one. This one's called Deer Hearts, and it's got little diamonds set in the faceted heart scrimshaws on the outside. This one, similar to the last piece, this one's called Natural Diamonds. Again, playing with that idea of the elk teeth being a prestige item. Also, all hand fabricated beads. These pieces are scrimshawed bone, again, part of that exhibition, playing with the idea of like the merging of traditional plateau aesthetics and contemporary luxury items. This is my first self-portrait ever, and it's cast from a model of my nose, complete with my septum ring, and bolo tie tips have glass. They have glass tapered like teardrops at the bottom. Here are some up close pictures of it. This piece was super fun. It's kind of funny. The mold of my nose was taken the year that I graduated from IAIA. So it was about 9 years ago. And it sat around and I didn't know what to do with it for years. I had all these ideas. I would pick it up, I would put it down. And then once I had started making bolo ties, I had cord in, sitting on my bench, and I had that nose sitting on my bench, and they just came together and they were meant to be. And so the septum ring, it moves, so it adds like a fun kinetic element when you wear it. The tie tips, super fun to make all the glass pieces for it. And yeah, just love that piece. This is another piece from the show I had at Wenatchee Valley College, incorporating the handmade glass beads on the left and then using scrimshaw on an elk tooth on the right. Our spider as a character in our stories is a part of weaving traditions, and wanted to incorporate that with this piece. I am also a basket maker. These woven pieces that are cast in silver they're made from small woven bags. So, or we call our baskets bags because they're so soft and they're flexible. But this piece is, I think, about an inch by an inch and a half is the size of the basket, and it is a full silver replica of a tiny woven basket. I made the chain to look like cordage, so I used wire to make twisted links and tried to give it like an elongated cord look. Another piece of the cast basket. This one's actually really tiny, maybe like 3/4 of an inch, half an inch. It's small, but it's very sweet. And I think that's going to segue us into my woven baskets. And I have just a few of those to share with you. This one is in the collection of the Washington State Historical Society. It's called Stargazer. That is my dog. It's made of hemp, and it's about, I think, 5 by 7 inches. This one is also in the collection of the Washington State Historical Society. It's titled Flora. It has flowers and animals from all around this region. So it's got columbine, bluebells, bleeding hearts, and then hummingbirds, dragonflies, butterfly, and then some little snails along the bottom. It is also made out of hemp, and it's a little larger than the previous one, probably 6 by 8. This piece is called Coyote and the Shoe Mesh Bow. It is about a story where it's kind of a long story, but it's called Coyote and Chickadee. And he steals the bow and arrow from Chickadee and then proceeds to get into a whole bunch of trouble. The clouds are laughing at him for how this story ends. And you'll see that there is a skull down at his foot. So all kinds of trouble. This one is, I believe, about 6 by 8. It is waxed linen. This piece is in the Gotchman collection in New York, and it is about a story. This one's titled Coyote and the Monster Who Ate Everyone. And the top and bottom, you see the jagged shapes. Those are the monster's teeth. So we're getting a view in through the monster's mouth, and he has eaten everyone, which is why all of the animal people are in there. And Bear is carrying somebody who hasn't made it out, but on the other side of it, Coyote and Fox are telling everybody to go so that they're going to start a fire so that everybody can escape. This piece is in the exhibition at the North Seattle Gallery. I've done this spider design numerous times. This is the first one that I did. It is a linen basket and it's quite small, but again, it goes back to spiders being a part of our weaving stories. And not only is spider like a celestial being, which is why he has the star on his back, but he's also, very shiny. So it's kind of like the idea was that not only is it symbolic of, that celestial nature, but also that it's how I'm making the basket shine. And this basket is also in the exhibition there at the college. It is the How Are You Feeling basket. I think most of us have probably seen these forms. And yeah, just playing off of that idea of kind of like the basket transforming into a mental health or pain survey. And that is the last piece I have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It's so great to see all of that work and sort of from the beginning of your working to now. Just so wonderful. I forgot to say at the beginning that if anybody had questions, they could put them in the chat. But since we didn't say that, now there's an opportunity to ask questions here. So is there anybody who has a question? Or maybe I could start a little bit. Yeah, I'll just start and then we'll see if somebody else has questions. So I was thinking about the Stargazer piece that you did and how like that looks like a very specific dog. It's your dog, right? And I was watching the talk that you gave for the School for Advanced Research, where you were sort of going through a bunch of the research that you did for baskets at, I guess, the Burke is where you did a lot of that research. How long have you been doing baskets? And then also like kind of looking at some of these beautiful baskets, is there something that you kind of want to talk about that research and how that sort of led you to making that? And then also you got such a great form, right, with your dog. Like it looks like a specific dog, which it seems like just like perfect.
Uh, yeah, so yeah, no, that's my dog Elvira. She has passed sadly, but she was amazing. She was a black pit bull I adopted from the Humane Society. Got her when she was almost 9 years old, and she was just amazing. So I always thought that she like, she kind of knew what was up, which is why she's looking at the stars. She's thinking about stuff. But what when I was looking through the collections at the Burke, what I was seeing for our traditions in plateau basketry, specifically twined basketry, was that there are, I think that people think of traditional patterns as being like, that there's a traditional form, it means a specific thing, and it's like, that's what's traditional to put on a basket. But what I saw at the Burke was a lot of creative expression, people's dogs, their horses, and also that, when you translate the image of an animal onto a woven form, it becomes abstracted. And so you kind of get this, you're not getting the picture like a realistic image of something. You're getting it filtered through a person's perception and then into this woven form. And it makes for amazing, amazing images. And so that was something that I found really inspiring, and just seeing people's, like, somebody had an idea and then they made it into a basket, and there are so many amazing ones there. I mean, there's one that has just some feet with shoes on them, like it's a woven flat bag that has feet with shoes, and somebody had a really great idea when they decided to make that, and now it's like it's in the Burke and it can inspire more weavers. So that's what I want to be a part of.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I love that idea that we think that there's like a very traditional way of going about things and that there's individuality in absolutely all of this. Suze Wolf asks, how do you keep your sense of humor? It's great to see work that is serious and funny at the same time, meaningful and endearing. And what a great question in on a day when our leader decided that maybe Indigenous Peoples Day was not a good idea. Right.
Yeah. Um, Thank you for that comment. That's wonderful to hear. Honestly, that's just like that is just who I am. I have I like to see like the bizarre or unusual or like awkward in things and then just kind of lean into that. And I do have a lot of fun with it. I know I talked about rocks a lot for the first part of my slideshow, and really it was just letting things inspire you, and even when they're a little weird or awkward, and just like let that happen. And so it's one of the things I enjoy most about making jewelry because there's something about making it to wear on your body. It's like a little joke or a funny little message, or it says something about you. And I think that a lot of the jewelry that I make, it is saying something about me, but also it's kind of just following those ideas and seeing where they go. And there's always these like really fun like aha moments or where I'll laugh out loud when it's like, you start to get the face in shape and then it's like it's looking back at you. And so it's just part of it that I really enjoy.
Wonderful. Alana asks, can you tell us what scrimshaw is and where you source the teeth, bone, and ivory from?
So scrimshaw is a technique where you make incisions into, you can use all kinds of materials to do scrimshaw. It isn't exclusive to ivory or bone. You can use various types of shell, like the options are limitless with what you can scrimshaw on. But I buy elk teeth from hunters generally. They're also given to me. People contact me because of the work that I make. So, like I seek them out and then people also find me. So the ivory for my wolf face was actually brought by a Maori artist who was part of that residency. His name is Rangi Kipa, and it is a sperm whale tooth from a traditional whale hunt. So that was it. That was a really cool opportunity to work with a material that is not like it's not really accessible to me, but I don't have any interest in working with people will often offer me like piano keys or various elephant ivory pieces, and I really don't have any interest in working with that type of ivory because it just the elk teeth feel right because they're like they're part of a long tradition, and they bear a specific significance in this region. But the piano keys and elephant ivory are materials that people do resource for scrimshaw. You can also try shell, like abalone, all kinds of stuff. You can scrimshaw on pearls. It's something that you can definitely take off just exploring with.
Wonderful. It's like a combination of printmaking and jewelry making as you're like,
Right. Oh, so to finish that thought, yeah, so you make incisions onto the material and then you use India ink is all I use. So you press India ink into the incision and then you seal it with beeswax. So it's a very simple process.
very cool. Thank you so much. Are there people who are here who would like to ask a couple questions?
I have three questions. Thank you so much for being here. And so the first one is, it seems like that you mostly maybe find the stones that you use. And I was curious if you also have like a place you would shop for or an area that you love getting stones from. And you don't have to give any secrets, even just like a yes or no would work for that question. Second question is if you had to pick an absolute favorite tool for carving stone, I'm curious what that would be. That might be a hard question. And then I'm just getting introduced to you right now. So I was curious if you have any videos of any of your processes anywhere on the internet. Thank you again.
I don't have any videos up, no. But my favorite tool for working with stone is I have two tools, and the ones I have specifically are made by Ameritools. One is a diamond saw that cuts through. These are specifically for lapidary, for like stonework. So it's a diamond saw where you can cut stones into pieces, and then what's called a flat lap, which is it's a flat rotating disc with various grits that you can like carve, do the rough carving on. And then I use a flex shaft. Mine is made by Fordham, and various diamond carving bits to do all of the carving. And then I go into different stages of polishing. And it really depends on the different type of stone, what type of polishing works best, but you can use abrasive silicone bits. They come in a variety of sizes, so you can really get into all of the curves and little nooks. Sandpaper also works really well. And then polishing paste. There's a variety of polishing pastes out there. You can use, there's like Zam is a classic, Red Rouge, or there is a brand that is sold by Rio Grande, which is a jewelry supplier, that is a water-based paste. It's much easier to work with, and it's less toxic. Of course, if you are carving stones, ivory, bones, shells especially, always wear a mask and work with the piece wet so that you aren't breathing the dust, because it is very bad for you. And then my favorite place to collect stones, I grew up right on the Columbia River here in Wenatchee. And so there's like a little beach area just down from the house I grew up in, which it's just always been a favorite spot. All along the Columbia, the Icicle River. I especially love the stones from Omak Lake because they're like this really amazing pastel granite that has pinks and oranges and like soft greens. So the type of stones vary so much depending on where you pick them up. We have a lot of similar types in this region that are like, igneous rocks. So like all the diorite, granite, the speckledy stones like that. We also have a lot of quartz, and there's just loads of them. But I will say that I just kind of think that there are beautiful rocks everywhere. So just getting out there and looking around, and you'll definitely see something to work with.
I just remember as a kid putting rocks for like 3 days in a rock tumbler and coming back and being like, what? That's what that actually looked like? Wow.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, Frida asked, do your finished pieces look just like your idea drawings, or did they evolve as you're going?
I'm not the most exact drawer, so I will say that the original ideas are kind of like, they're kind of loose. They're more in my mind than they are on paper. And I think that being that way, they do tend to shift based on what I'm seeing. And also, again, working with the found stones, or specifically with the found stones, I kind of just let it become what it wants to be sometimes, which may sound a little weird, but it's totally what it's like. You start carving and you kind of start to see like, the features of it. And so very much does change throughout the process. It's only occasionally that the piece has to kind of conform to a specific likeness. I did the ebony cat was a commission, and it is supposed to be a portrait of someone's cat. So I had to keep that one as like close to the source images as possible, but a lot of times it's pretty fluid. It's whatever I think needs to happen next is where I go with it.
Perfect. We're getting some really good questions. So Thank you. The Jewelry Studio from North asks, thank you so much for sharing your work. I'm curious about the pace of making for you. Are there parts of the making process in stone, in metal, in weaving, etc., that are comfortably slow for you? And are there processes or parts of making that are frustrating for you or that you avoid? You see where that comes from, a teacher, right?
Yeah. So I'm pretty slow. Like overall, I am not I am not interested in, nor have I ever been interested in like a manufacturing pace. My focus is to do the absolute best job that I can and make sure that each time I make something again, at least some part of it is better than the last part. So like pushing to get like a more refined result or try a new mechanism for like how the piece functions. Like with the bolos, I've tried various ways of fabricating bolo slides for the back. And so that definitely slows things down. But let's see. Avoid, the things that are well, those slugs, they are very tedious to make the slug body fit into, or make the stone fit into the body. And it's like a tension fit. So once it goes in, you are never getting that stone out. So like when it gets soldered, the head, that neck piece on the slug is called a mantle. The head, the mantle, the skirt, and the base all have to be precisely lined up so that that stone fits in and then fits in properly. Because if it goes in and it's not fitting properly, it's a good chance I can't get it back out without like causing some damage. So out of all the things that I make, those slugs are like kind of the most nerve-wracking because I've already invested so much time into fabricating each of those elements, making sure that they all have a perfect fit, and then soldering them together. And if there's any shift in that part, so it's the soldering. It's the soldering of the slugs. Yeah, that it can be really stressful.
Wonderful. Justin says, could you elaborate on your journey in the arts? Was this always your desire? And was your desire always to be a storyteller through your work?
When so my uncle is an artist, so I've been influenced by and inspired by his work for my whole life. I When I went to IAIA, so when I started at the Institute for American Indian Arts, I was a museum studies major because I was like, oh, I'm going to be practical. And this is like I can get a job and it's not, because I did recognize that being an artist can be difficult and that I thought going into museum studies that it would be like have more security in it. And I took up all of my studio arts electives within like the first, definitely within the first year. And I just wanted to take more, but I couldn't take more unless I switched to a studio arts major. So that's what I did. And I ended up graduating with my BFA in studio arts and a certificate in museum studies. But it was real, and I took a lot of printmaking because my uncle's a printmaker. But it was really when I started, when I took my first metalsmithing class, that it just felt like that was what I was supposed to do. And a lot of the questions about like, what kind of work I wanted to make, making work on paper for me is kind of interesting because it's like totally blank and you got to like make the marks and put it down and there's a certain amount of like I don't know, like maybe it's confidence that you have to like get it down on this blank sheet that I struggled with a little bit. But when it came to, I was like a punk rock kid and always liked to make my own stuff, and the more outrageous, the better. So making jewelry and like making these unusual little things to wear just felt right. But also, I really like the idea of them being worn around by other people instead of just being like a stationary object. So there were a lot of of things that I hadn't quite figured out with, like works on paper and other medium that just felt perfect for me for jewelry.
Nice. And your storytelling portion of that was like, do you?
I think that that's just kind of that's how I work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
I do really like taking stories, or I mean stories, traditional stories, or just ideas, and kind of like making these transformations.
So there's another question. Virginia was wondering what the process to set the eyes in the stone is like.
Well, if we're talking about the emerald eyes, that's a tube setting. You definitely find a video for it on Instagram. And then when I set pieces, so when I have the stone and I put elements onto it, whether it's like the cap that it hangs from or eyes, teeth, or other parts, I solder a post onto the back of the metal piece and I drill into the stone so that it has an anchor. And sometimes you can do it by riveting all the way through the stone if you want to do it free of any type of adhesive or a two-part epoxy. You can use that to hold the anchor in. And so it's a little bit less like like just an adhesive contact. It actually goes into the stone and then holds it more securely. The eyes, yeah, any of the eyes, any of the metal components that are on the pieces, they are all made that way.
Is there anybody who wants to unmute and ask a question at this point? Do you have any last piece of information that you want to leave us with?
I was wondering how many people who are attending today are part of the jewelry program.
Ooh, how are we going to do that? um, there's
I see one, two.
I know that Justin is out in the world starting to make his living in some way in jewelry and in ceramics. Is that true, Justin? Am I saying that right? He's not going to unmute. Yes. Good.
All right.
Oh, yeah. There's more than 12. There are 12 in the studio watching, and then there are more in here as well. So.
Oh, cool. Well, that's awesome. I was really excited to have the tour of the jewelry studio there. That was awesome.
Yeah, and there's also another room that you did not see yet. So
Hopefully soon.
yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for being here. It's just such a pleasure. So we hope that you'll come back and see what we're up to, and please keep us knowing what you're up to as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.